The last kamikaze attack in history didn't happen during World War II. It occurred 30 years later on a quiet morning in downtown Tokyo, and the target wasn't a warship or a military base. It was the mansion of a businessman who helped sell an airplane. Picture this, it's March 23, 1976. An actor named Mitsuyasu Maino puts on a World War II headband, rents a Piper Cherokee, and tells the flight instructor he wants to practice touch and goes. But at 1,500 feet, Maino shoves the instructor out of the cockpit, banks the plane sharp left, screams, "Long live the Emperor" over the radio, and dives straight toward the home of Yoshio Kodama, one of the most powerful men in Japan. Maino wasn't protesting a war. He was protesting the purchase of an airplane. This one, the Lockheed L-1011 TriStar. And the story of how this plane led to that kamikaze attack involves bribery that toppled governments, bankruptcy that nearly destroyed British industry, and a technological masterpiece that became a commercial disaster. In 1966, Boeing launched the 747 program and promised to change aviation forever. Everyone wanted a jumbo jet, but airlines faced a problem. The 747 was too big for many domestic airports and regional routes. They needed something smaller but still wide-bodied, something that could carry enough passengers to make money without requiring massive new infrastructure. This kicked off the fiercest competition in aviation history. In one corner, McDonnell Douglas with their DC-10. In the other, Lockheed with their L-1011. Both companies were building essentially the same airplane, a wide-body trijet. Both knew that the market probably wouldn't support two models. Whoever got to market first would likely dominate sales. Whoever came second might not survive. McDonnell Douglas wanted to beat Lockheed to market at any cost. They stuck to conventional, proven technology to speed up production. Take a third engine, mount it straight through the tail in a simple vertical duct. Utilitarian, straightforward, designed to be built fast. Get airlines flying and making money as quickly as possible. Lockheed took a different approach entirely. They refused to build what they saw as just another transport aircraft. Look at the difference in philosophy. McDonnell Douglas used a straight vertical duct for the center engine, a simple pipe through the tail. Lockheed engineers designed an S-duct, a complex curving tunnel that routed air from an intake on top of the fuselage through an elegant bend down to an engine at the base of the vertical stabilizer. It was an engineering flex that kept drag low and made the plane incredibly stable, but that perfectionism burned through 18 months and $40 million that McDonnell Douglas was spending on production and sales. Lockheed bet the entire company that airlines would pay a premium for engineering excellence rather than quick delivery. They were wrong. But it gets worse. The perfectionism extended to the engines. Lockheed hired Rolls-Royce to build the RB211, which was supposed to be a revolution in jet propulsion. Rolls-Royce promised fan blades made of a carbon fiber composite called high-fill. Lighter than titanium, stronger than steel, it was going to give the L-1011 better fuel economy and performance than anything else in the sky. But there was a problem. At 500 miles per hour, rain doesn't fall on an engine. It impacts the leading edges like a sandblaster. The carbon fiber blades started eroding during testing. Engineers added metal guards to protect the leading edges, but the reinforcement made the blades brittle. When they finally fired a chicken at the engine to simulate a bird strike, something every jet engine has to survive, the reinforced carbon blades didn't just crack. They shattered into pieces. Rolls-Royce had to scrap the entire high-fill program and switch to heavy titanium blades, which meant redesigning much of the engine core to handle the different weight distribution and structural loads. The delays piled up. The costs spiraled completely out of control. On February 4, 1971, the unthinkable happened. Rolls-Royce, the company that had powered the Spitfire and built some of the most legendary engines in aviation history, collapsed into bankruptcy. 5,000 workers were sent home overnight. And in the California desert, Lockheed had 50 L-1011 airframes sitting on the ramp with gaping holes where the engines should be. The perfect plane was effectively a very expensive lawn ornament. The British government couldn't let Rolls-Royce die. This was a company that represented British engineering prestige. Letting it fail would have been a national humiliation. So they nationalized it, pumped in £260 million to keep the doors open and the RB-211 program alive. They weren't bailing out Lockheed. They were saving what they saw as a crown jewel of British industry. Meanwhile, McDonnell Douglas was already delivering DC-10s to airlines and printing money. Lockheed was hemorrhaging cash. Their board was seriously discussing canceling the entire L-1011 program. The company that built the P-38 Lightning and the SR-71 Blackbird was on the verge of being destroyed by a commercial airliner that couldn't even fly yet. But here's what nobody expected. When the engines finally worked, the rest of the plane worked almost too well. December 29, 1972. Night. Eastern Airlines Flight 401, a brand new L-1011, is on approach to Miami International Airport. The pilots lower the landing gear, but the green light indicating that the nose gear is down and locked fails to illuminate. The crew isn't sure if the gear is actually down or if it's just a burnt-out bulb. A 40-cent piece of glass and wire. For the next 4 minutes, the captain, the first officer, and the flight engineer all fixate on this one tiny light. They're trying to pull the bulb out of its socket to check it, fiddling with it while the autopilot holds the plane in a gentle left turn over the pitch-black Everglades. There's no moon that night, just darkness and swamp below. At some point during this distraction, the captain accidentally bumps the control yoke. It's barely a nudge, but it's enough to disengage the altitude hold function and put the autopilot into a mode called control wheel steering. In this mode, the autopilot stops maintaining altitude and simply holds whatever pitch attitude the plane is in. The L-1011 begins a slow, almost imperceptible descent toward the swamp below. The plane was flying perfectly. All 3 engines were running smoothly. The landing gear was actually down and locked. But because the L-1011 was so smooth, so quiet, and so stable, nobody in the cockpit felt the descent. The altitude alert did sound, a half-second chime, but the crew dismissed it as a false alarm. They were too focused on the light bulb. At 11:42 p.m., Flight 401 hit the Everglades at 227 miles per hour, plowing through 9 feet of swamp water and sawgrass. The impact tore the aircraft apart. 101 people died, and the survivors spent the night in alligator-infested water waiting for rescue helicopters. The crash wasn't caused by a mechanical failure. Every system on the airplane was functioning exactly as designed. It was human error born from trusting the automation too much and losing situational awareness. The crew stopped flying the airplane and started troubleshooting a trivial problem, and the L-1011's advanced autopilot didn't protect them from their own distraction. This tragedy fundamentally changed how we train pilots. It gave birth to modern crew resource management, the concept that flying safely requires the entire crew to communicate, cross-check each other, and maintain awareness of what the airplane is doing. The industry learned that a highly automated cockpit can become a trap if the crew becomes so focused on managing systems that they forget to fly the airplane. So after the bankruptcy, the bailout, and the crash, why do aviation enthusiasts still talk about this plane with reverence? Why do pilots who flew it describe it as one of the finest aircraft ever built? Because when the humans weren't interfering, when the systems were being used as intended, the L-1011 flew like nothing else in the sky. The TriStar was built around an all-flying tail called the stabilator, where the entire horizontal stabilizer pivoted as a single unit rather than using separate elevators. This gave pilots enormous pitch authority and unprecedented control precision. But the real innovation was how Lockheed integrated this with their direct lift control system. When the flaps extended beyond 30 degrees for landing, 4 inboard spoiler panels on each wing would deploy to a neutral position of about 7 degrees. From there, these spoilers responded directly to the pilot's control inputs. Push forward on the yoke and the spoilers extended further, killing lift and increasing the descent rate. Pull back and they retracted, giving you more lift to slow the descent or climb. Meanwhile, the stabilator made continuous adjustments to keep the nose perfectly level. The result was something unprecedented. Pilots could make precise glide slope corrections without changing the aircraft's pitch attitude. You could ride the glide slope down with the deck angle remaining absolutely constant, maintaining approach speed within a knot or two, even in gusty, turbulent conditions. It gave pilots a level of precision during the most critical phase of flight that other aircraft simply couldn't match. And if you couldn't see the runway because of fog or low clouds, in 1972, the TriStar became the first wide-body jet certified for Category 3B Autoland operations. While other jumbo jets were diverting to alternate airports due to weather, the L-1011 could descend through thick fog and land itself with essentially zero visibility, guided by 3 independent autopilot computers that cross-checked each other's calculations. The level of redundancy was extraordinary for the early 1970s. The flight control system could detect an engine failure and automatically adjust thrust and control surfaces to compensate before the pilots even noticed the problem. The aircraft had 4 independent hydraulic systems, more than any other wide-body at the time, and all 4 powered the stabilator because Lockheed considered pitch control to be the most critical system. It was a technological marvel, a glimpse of what the future of aviation would look like. But in the 1970s, superior technology wasn't enough to sell airplanes. You needed leverage. And Lockheed was desperate. In the Netherlands, they targeted Prince Bernhard, the husband of Queen Juliana. Lockheed slipped him $1.1 million over several years to use his influence to push KLM Royal Dutch Airlines toward purchasing the TriStar instead of the DC-10. Bernhard was a decorated war hero and a member of the royal family. Yet he sold his integrity and his reputation for $1 million. When the bribes were exposed in 1976, he was forced to resign from all his military and corporate positions in disgrace. The scandal nearly brought down the Dutch monarchy. But the Netherlands was just the opening act. Japan was where the story turned truly dark. Enter Yoshio Kodama. He was a right-wing ultranationalist who had been imprisoned as a suspected war criminal after World War II. After his release, he became what the Japanese call a kuromaku, a black curtain or fixer, someone who operates in the shadows between legitimate business, organized crime, and government. He had deep connections to the Yakuza and to the highest levels of Japanese politics. Lockheed paid Kodama roughly $7 million, about $30 million in today's money, to influence the decision about which wide-body trijet All Nippon Airways would purchase. ANA's pilots and technical staff wanted the DC-10. They had evaluated both aircraft, and the DC-10 better fit their operational needs and route network. But Prime Minister Kakue Tanaka intervened personally. He overruled the airline's technical decision and pressured ANA to purchase the Lockheed L-1011 instead. The deal went through. Lockheed got the sale. Kodama got his money. And for a while, it looked like the bribery scheme had worked. Then the scandal exploded. American investigators uncovered the payments during a Senate investigation into corporate corruption. The news hit Japan like a bomb. Prime Minister Tanaka was arrested and put on trial. His government collapsed. The Japanese public was furious that their leaders had been bought by a foreign corporation, that decisions affecting their national airline had been made not on merit but on bribes. That rage brings us back to March 23, 1976, and Mitsuyasu Maino in his rented Piper Cherokee. Maino had left a suicide note calling Kodama the devil who sold Japan to America. He saw himself as a purifying force, someone who would cleanse the nation's honor with fire. Maino circled Kodama's mansion 3 times, building up his resolve, and then pushed the yoke forward and dove. The small plane crashed to the 2nd floor of the house in a ball of flame, but Kodama survived. He was home at the time, but he was on a different floor and escaped with only minor injuries. Even Maino's kamikaze attack, his ultimate sacrifice, couldn't achieve its goal. Despite all the bribes, all the political manipulation, all the blood and scandal, Lockheed never reached their sales targets for the L-1011. They sold only 250 aircraft total, far short of the break-even point of around 500 units. The bribery scandal destroyed what was left of their reputation in the commercial aviation market, and Lockheed decided to exit the airline business forever. The company that had built some of the most advanced aircraft in history would never build another passenger jet. But here's where the story takes its final turn. The cheap, simple DC-10, the plane that beat the L-1011 to market and won the sales war, suffered a series of catastrophic accidents in the 1970s due to design flaws. Cargo doors blew out mid-flight due to faulty latches, causing explosive decompressions. The worst of these, Turkish Airlines Flight 981 in 1974, killed 346 people when the cargo door failure caused the cabin floor to collapse and sever all the control cables. Then, in 1979, American Airlines Flight 191 lost an engine during takeoff from Chicago due to improper maintenance procedures that exploited design vulnerabilities in the pylon attachment. The engine separation cut hydraulic lines and caused an asymmetric stall. All 273 people aboard died. It was the deadliest aviation accident in U.S. history. For years afterward, the DC-10 was one of the most feared aircraft in the sky, and some passengers actively avoided flying on it. The L-1011? It had a remarkable safety record. Aside from pilot errors like Flight 401 and weather-related incidents, the TriStar had 0 fatal crashes caused by a structural or mechanical design failure. It was over-engineered, expensive to build, and almost absurdly robust. The airplane was so fundamentally sound that long after commercial airlines retired their fleets in the 1990s and early 2000s, the British Royal Air Force bought used L-1011 airframes and converted them into aerial refueling tankers. They flew them into combat zones during operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, and those converted TriStars served for another 30 years before finally being retired in 2014. But the story doesn't end there. Today, there's still one L-1011 flying. It's called Stargazer, and it's operated by Northrop Grumman. They converted it into an airborne rocket launch platform. The plane climbs to 40,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean, and then it drops a Pegasus rocket from a pylon under its fuselage. The rocket ignites and carries satellites into orbit. The plane that destroyed Lockheed's commercial aviation business is now helping us reach space. An aircraft designed in the 1960s, built in the 1970s, and retired from passenger service in the 1990s is still flying missions that push the boundaries of what's possible. Lockheed bet everything on building the perfect wide-body trijet, and they lost. They lost the race to market, they lost the sales war, they lost their reputation, and they lost billions of dollars. But 50 years later, every DC-10 has been grounded, while the TriStar is still defying gravity and launching rockets into orbit. Sometimes the right way to build something isn't the profitable way. Sometimes doing it right means you'll lose money, lose the race, and watch your competitors celebrate while you struggle to survive. But sometimes, decades later, when all the sales figures are forgotten and all the quarterly earnings reports have turned to dust, the thing you built the right way is still flying. And maybe that matters more than we think.